Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And over the last few days, we've gotten various financial reports for different gaming companies. PlayStation is actually part of that list, and we're going to talk about them here in a little bit because they actually yielded some rather interesting results. But there's one in specific that really stands out among the crowd because it not only showcases how well their new strategy is working, but more importantly, it also confirms why these companies needs to stop acting like they're an arm for hire. Exclusivity deals are just not working anymore. Go ask Square Enix how their exclusive partnership is going with PlayStation. Not very well, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But there is a company that's leading by example, and we're going to talk about them today. Now, we also have a new PlayStation IP to talk about because one of their premier studios apparently is cooking up something. Before we get started, though, do make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's still about 50% of you that currently aren't subscribed, and it's a great way to get notified every time I post a new video, which is every weekday. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with a big-time PlayStation 4 and Xbox One port being Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Yes, we are talking about the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One in the year of 2024 because they're very much still vital in the game industry. A lot of people still have not upgraded to this generation of consoles, and that could be for a number of different reasons. One is that they might be perfectly satisfied with the performance that those consoles still gives them. They're still getting some of the biggest and most popular games like Call of Duty. That comes every year to these consoles. They have Fortnite, they have Madden, etc., etc. And they're fine with how those games run on last generation consoles. So if that's the case, then why pay hundreds of dollars to upgrade? People are already struggling as is with the inflation, and there just hasn't been that big popular game that's exclusive to this generation that's going to make people feel justification that they need to upgrade. Now, maybe next year with Grand Theft Auto 6, that game could change things. We'll see how all that works out, but for now, it's clear that a lot of people are still playing on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, and that's why EA went out of their way to port Star Wars Jedi Survivor to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. It will be out next month on September 17th. Now, it will be interesting, though, to see how it performs, just kind of considering it did struggle early on for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5. But, at the same time, to be completely fair here, Respawn did end up fixing that game up, and hopefully this turns out to be a solid port when it does release. Okay, so let's go talk about some financial results for PlayStation, and then we'll talk about a couple of third parties because I think that's actually where things get really interesting. As for PlayStation, though, they revealed their quarter one results, and you can see an overview here. The PlayStation 5 sold 2.4 million units over the quarter. They're now up to 61.7 million PlayStation 5 sold lifetime. They sold 53.6 million units of software. Their first party sold 6 million during the quarter. Their digital download ratio was 80%, and then their monthly active users was 116 million. So on one side, it's really cool to see the PS5 break that 60 million milestone. As a fan, it's really cool to see something like that, and it looks extremely, extremely impressive. The only thing is that I do understand that Sony wants the PS5 to outpace the PlayStation 4, and currently that's still not the case. AAA games are very expensive to make, and that's why it's important for them to outpace that PlayStation 4 because they want to sell more games than what they were during this period last generation. Still, though, it does seem like their software is performing well enough over a slower period where they haven't really had a lot of first-party games. Helldivers 2 has been a big surprise for them. It's done very well, and, that's nice to see. But on the downside, their hardware was down by 27% over the quarter. This is something that we've really seen across the board this year. Xbox has been down, the aging Nintendo Switch has been down, and so too is the PlayStation 5, as we can see here. Now, I do think that inflation plays a part into this situation just because it does make it harder for people to justify a purchase for a new game console. And I mean, we are in an unprecedented generation where console prices are rising rather than decreasing. That's crazy when you compare it to any other generation before it. So basically, when you put this into perspective, consoles are more expensive, games are more expensive, and we're also getting less exclusives. So I don't really think that it's all that surprising that we are seeing such a down year for consoles across the board and that less people are jumping in at this period of time. Again, it'll be very interesting to see what happens next year when GTA 6 releases, and for that matter, we'll see if the PlayStation 5 sees some kind of boost with the PlayStation 5 Pro, which allegedly will release later this year. Now, let's go talk about those third-party companies, though, because this is where I think things get really interesting. Now, I want to go ahead and first highlight Square Enix because they are, in my opinion, an example of a missed opportunity. Over the last so many years, they've made a lot of their games exclusive to one platform or another. They took those short-term deals that I think has impacted them in a negative way. And even their new CEO, which seems to understand this, has suggested as much. He's made it loud and clear that they as a company will move away from exclusive deals going forward. But for now, they are still stuck in an exclusive partnership with PlayStation and Final Fantasy. They just dropped their biggest game ever exclusively for the PlayStation 5, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Despite that, though, a new report shows that their sales still dropped year over year. Now, it was noted that they did turn a profit, so there is a good sign there, but there was no indication that Rebirth was the resounding hit that Square Enix wanted it to be. In fact, there was actually a previous report that indicated Rebirth might have actually been a little bit underwhelming for them in terms of total units sold. Now, I don't know if that has since changed. Again, they did not really indicate one way or the other. I've said this time and time again, though. I'm okay with exclusive partnerships with certain games because exclusivity does have some positive benefits, but you have to be smart about which games you decide to do that with, and I don't think that this was a smart choice by Square Enix. Final Fantasy is just far too big of a franchise to lock away on a single platform. I think for a franchise like this, it would be much better suited to grow it across all platforms because that's better for its long-term future. I used to say the exact same thing about Sega and the Persona series, and, well, it's very interesting because apparently, unlike Square Enix's approach, Sega's more multi-platform strategy has paid off after all. Sega over the first quarter saw a 181% boost to its profits. Suffice to say, that is pretty incredible. Now, some of this is because of the inclusion of Ravio and Angry Birds, though. This is a very similar situation to the Xbox Activision acquisition, where that alone will play a significant part in any kind of year-over-year increase, so we can't ignore that. But Sega did specifically credit other things as well, including new console games such as Yakuza and repeat sales for past games. They mentioned Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, which sold 500,000 units in just its first 3 days alone. They also mentioned Persona 5 Royal and Unicorn Overlord, both of which have sustained success well past their initial launches. Now, there's one thing that really stands out about these games, though. All of these games are multi-platform, and even more so, outside of Unicorn Overlord, the other three franchises were actually previously exclusive to a single platform. The Yakuza series was originally attached to PlayStation only, yet now it's having success across PC and Xbox as well. Then you have Persona 5 Royal. I mean, this game released years ago as a PlayStation exclusive, and fans begged and begged and begged Sega to port it to more platforms. Now, they finally listened. They brought it over to PC, they brought it to Xbox and Nintendo, and look what happened. They're still talking about its success in financial reports. Then you have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. Previously, the base edition was a Switch exclusive, but the definitive edition launched as a multi-platform game, and again, it sold a crazy 500,000 units in just 3 days alone. I think that right there tells you everything that you need to know about their strategy. It seems like multi-platform is paying off for them after all. Maybe other companies should take note of this, and I think especially with the Switch successor inbound. These Japanese companies would be absolutely crazy not to port as many of their games as they can to the Switch successor, considering Nintendo is king in Japan, and it's really not even close. I'm looking at you, Square Enix. You need to bring over the Final Fantasy games and the Kingdom Hearts series to that Switch successor as soon as possible, because there's a lot of untapped potential there. Now, one last thing before we go. Let's go and shift gears here and talk about something besides financials, because Sony Santa Monica and their brand new IP has been making headlines as of late. Of course, this is the studio behind God of War, which is often considered to be one of Sony's top 3 studios, if not their absolute best, depending on who you ask. Well, the thing is that they've been working on multiple projects for quite some time. Cory Barlog, which was the director for the superior God of War 2018, is currently heading up a new game. And we've known about that since at least 2021. If you weren't aware, Ragnarok was actually directed by somebody else while Cory Barlog is working on this new project. Thanks to an employee, though, we do now know that they are making progress on that new IP. It is still being worked on in the background. This was posted on their LinkedIn profile where they said, Santa Monica Studios presented the opportunity of coming back as a character supervisor, looking after the entire character development pipeline on their new IP. So here I am, thrilled to be back, working again with the crew and pushing characters in video games together. So, whatever this game is, despite Sony's silence, it's still making progress in the background, and by this point, my guess is that it's probably going to be Sony Santa Monica's next game, which I think at first is going to surprise a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people actually realize that they're working on a new IP, and I think most people are just kind of expecting them to continue God of War and nothing else. So I think a lot of people are really going to be surprised by this eventual announcement, but I do think that this is a very smart move by Sony. Just considering how long games takes to develop anymore, I don't foresee a new God of War game until the PlayStation 6, but because they greenlit this second team, there is a very good chance that we might see this new IP sometime this generation for the PlayStation 5. Let me know, though, what would you like to see most from this new IP in Sony Santa Monica? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, subscribe and peace out.